Billy, it seems like the hot topic of conversation lately seems to be what a contract extension would look like for a few key promising young Red Wings. Now, Healthy Scratch Red Wings Report did do a couple videos on this. They specifically looked in on Seider and Raymond, did a pretty damn good job of it.
Agreed.
But to my understanding, we're going to take a bit of a different angle to this. Now, full disclosure for the viewers at home. I was getting lunch a few days ago and Billy texts me in all caps, "Oh my God, I think I found something."
Yep.
And he had me pretty intrigued. I rushed home and he walked me through what he's about to walk you guys through. And I'll say it ahead of time. It is very, very interesting. It actually, there's more of a connection here than I think most people would have thought without taking the dive that you have. So I want to just give you full credit of what's about to happen here. You impressed me. Viewers at home, this is your chance to be impressed as well. Billy, what do you got?
All right. So instead of taking the angle of comparing Raymond and Seider and Berggren and Larkin to other players with similar stat lines and similar places necessarily in their career across the league, I wanted to look at Steve Yzerman. I wanted to see what Steve Yzerman did with the Tampa Bay Lightning, building a dynasty. I think everyone across the league gives him the credit for the run that they won on. He never won a cup with them, but he built that team, you know? And as Red Wings fans, we constantly keep telling ourselves that, you know, Steve Yzerman is this great, great GM. He's ahead above everyone else. We keep talking about how special he is, and I don't want to compare him to contract negotiations of a standard NHL GM. I want to give him the credit. I want to see what he has done. And the things that we can look at right now are that he got Larkin signed under $9 million. I don't think many people saw that coming at all. You got Cat under $8 million. I don't think many people saw that coming at all. He gets surprise signings out of the off seasons, like in a David Perron, a Kubalik, Comfer, Cop. Like, as much as you might hear a little like ridicule across the league of like, I can't believe you just signed Cop at $5.6 million. Fact is, he played as a number 2 center, and a number 2 center making $5.6 million on your roster is a good deal. Finding NHL caliber defensemen at reasonable money. Laugh at the Hall contract all you want. You won't be laughing at the end of the year when he just proves that he is a solid third or second line defenseman. So I want to give this guy all the credit in the world. And when I looked, Josh, when I started looking into on Cap Friendly, shout out to Cap Friendly, they do such a spectacular job. They have a list of every contract that a GM has signed. I looked, he has only signed a few 8-year contracts. The players that those have gone on: Kucherov, Stamkos, Hedman, and Larkin. And it got my head thinking. I'm like, okay, so where were these players back when? Like, what were the contract things? Was he signing them like every other year or whatever? No, it's insanely similar to what happened in 2016 Tampa Bay Lightning to where the Red Wings are right now. And I want to talk about that a lot.
So a quick reminder, as you guys have probably seen in previous videos, we pretty much answer every single comment. We love having the conversation with you guys. If you'd like, head down to the comments right now and put down what you think you would like to see in a contract extension for a Mo Seider, a Lucas Raymond, maybe a Berggren, without any of the information you're about to be told. Let's have some fun with this one because the deep dive is deep. I'm warning you right now. This is a deep, deep dive. Where do you want to actually start with it?
So we're going to start off with the Tampa players, looking a bit at their careers, and we're going to start with Steven Stamkos. So in 2011, at the age of 21, almost a point per game player. He was their center. He was, you know, pretty even across the board on goals and assists. If you look there, pretty split player, great stats. Number 1 center, was definitely coming in to his own across the NHL. There was a lot of hype, a lot of respect for him across the league. And 5 years later, after that contract, you can see that those stats stayed relatively consistent, but he did have a leg injury in there. I want to give Stamkos the benefit here. He had that horrible leg injury. Shout out Boston for, you know, hurting another player. But anyways, he definitely exploded into a goal scorer. And that resulted in an 8-year, $8.5 million contract. His first extension was just 5 years at 7.5. Both solid money for that time, both good term, signed by Steve Yzerman.
Okay, so in this scenario, Steven Stamkos is Dylan Larkin.
Yeah, I would say that if we're going to look into it a little more, but yeah, absolutely. I would say that that's who we're going to be comparing here. Up next, I want to look at Nikita Kucherov, who in 2016, he was 23 years old, coming off his rookie contract. He signed a 3-year, 4.7. And if you look, the points per game aren't impressive. It just, when you think of Kucherov, that's not what you're thinking of. But you can see he was a good playmaker. He was scoring goals, didn't seem to miss a lot of games, decent time on ice. 2 years into that extension, only 2 years, 3-year deal, 2 years into it, he exploded. He started to dominate. And how did he do it? He was a playmaker. You can see that the goals went up. He became better across the board, but where you see the biggest jump are the assists. And he went to 1.22 points per game. He became elite. And he exploded. He came on the scene, and Steve Yzerman rewarded it. 8-year, 9.5. In 2018, that contract is elite money. It's not McDavid Matthews generational money by any means, but it's elite money that Steve Yzerman signed him to. He locked him up.
And so for the sake of the deep dive, Kucherov is being compared to Raymond, and you're going to use also for Berggren then?
Yes, I'm going to apply his stats and his contract to both of them as well.
Okay.
But last but not least, off the Tampa Bay roster that we're looking at here is Victor Hedman, Vezina defenseman, 2011, 21 years old. He signed a 5-year, $4 million extension after his entry contract, played a good amount of games, got a decent amount of points, a lot of time on ice, and you can see that he hit and he blocked shots. He was a defensive defenseman, and he was growing, and everyone respected him. Everyone wanted him on their team. Big body, great defenseman. 5 years later in 2016, no, all these in 2016, like I said, you can see that he continued to grow. In that 5-year span, he performed very well. You can see that the points went up, time on ice went up, his hits and his blocks went up. He just continued to grow at a very steady rate. And for that number one defenseman on the Tampa Bay Lightning, Steve signed an 8-year, $7.9 million average contract, locking him up again. So at this point in 2016, he has locked up Stamkos and he has locked up Hedman.
And then obviously Hedman in this scenario is going to be Seider.
Yes. Please remember that. Please remember how much you love Hedman right now. And now we're going to look at some Detroit Red Wings that have been signed or need to be signed. And we're going to start with Dylan Larkin, who we're only going to look at the stats that Larkin got while he was with Steve Yzerman as a GM. And he's got almost 300 games, 224 points, a little under a point per game, but he had like a really bad lull year, and last year he was right back up to that point per game. You know, he's been performing on a pretty bad team, and he got an 8-year, $8.7 million contract. I think that's pretty under what a lot of people were expecting, and I think we have definitely seen him develop a lot as like a two-way center. He is very defensively responsible, has a lot of speed.
Yeah. I think the most important thing to note with Larkin specifically being the one who's going to have the most time on the team that we're looking at here, he spent the most time on the worst Red Wings team we've seen in our lives.
Red Wings 2.0.
That is so important to remember when comparing this here. Go ahead.
While looking at Dylan Larkin, I want to compare him again back to Steven Stamkos. And if you look, they were both 26 and they both signed 8-year long deals. They were both the number one center. And isn't it a little wild that a contract 7 years ago is only getting paid $0.2 million more per year? I know that you can look at the stats and say Stamkos is a better goal scorer. I don't think you're going to find anyone that's going to argue you on that at all. I would then argue that Dylan Larkin is a more well-rounded player than Steven Stamkos. And the way that this team is being built and the strength of this team right now seems to be two-way centers down the middle. And Larkin fits that. And we locked him up at that 8-year. So we have our Steven Stamkos. If you're following this like rubric or this narrative that Steve Yzerman wants to build the team the same, and you have this excitement because of what the Tampa Bay Lightning became, here's step one: getting the number one center. It was the first thing he did. It's the first thing he's doing here. It's all lining up, right? You would say that this is a pretty good comparison between these two players?
Absolutely.
And I think it speaks to the credit of the contract at 8.7 years later. That's wonderful. It's amazing. Next player I want to look at is Lucas Raymond. In his first 2 years, we all know that he hit the sophomore slump. We all know that he had a Calder-like rookie season.
We'll never know how close he really was because we know they didn't want to have two Red Wings going for the Calder trophy, but he definitely put up Calder numbers, no doubt.
Exactly. 0.65 points per game. That's another big thing here when it comes to forwards, is what I'm realizing, the correlation of contracts moving forward here. But if we're going to look at Raymond and we're going to project what he could do next year, within reason, I don't think he breaks 30 goals. I don't think he breaks 40 assists, but I think he puts up 65 points. That feels reasonable for him playing 78 games. He's missed, I think, like 4 games each of the previous 2 seasons. So just keeping that standard. I don't want to speculate time on ice and projecting. I don't know if he's going to be top line Don't know if he's going to be second line, but I'm expecting him to build on his rookie year. In relation to his rookie stats, this is better. I think he has the situation right now to build on that rookie year rather than likely being on the top line.
It is consistent with our opinion that we had on the breakout video that you expect a player like Lucas Raymond to excel going into this next year.
This is where I sent you the text, Josh. I got the Stamkos and the Larkin stuff, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's close. We already loved Larkin so much. But what I never thought about was how players have developed on their way up. And looking specifically at Kucherov in 2016 at the age of 23, I didn't pay attention to them. Us Red Wings fans probably didn't pay attention to 23-year-old Nikita Kucherov. You probably heard murmurs, just like people hear murmurs of Berggren, Raymond, Seider, like across the league, and you're like, okay, but that's on the Red Wings. That's what the Tampa Bay Lightning were back then. It was like, okay, that's their team. We're not too concerned about it. Specifically here in Detroit, we're like, let's get Kyle Quincy. Let's go for a cup.
That was worth a first.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at the way Nikita Kucherov developed, right, in 2016 at 23, how scary are these stats compared to one another? Specifically looking at points per game and even time on ice. You could say that with the more time on ice, there is more responsibility. There's more chance for success at the time or the same time with Raymond. Kucherov is also 2 years older, guys. That's important. We have a 21-year-old Raymond who, if he meets our expectations going into his third year, is absolutely on par with a 23-year-old Nikita Kucherov. This feels like the home run swing. So if I'm gonna project a contract for him, I'm expecting a 3-year, 5.1 to 5.7. It's gonna build on what Kucherov did a little bit. Steve will give him that for, you know, the inflation across the league, but I'm going to take that Steve Yzerman discount. I'm going to take that $300K off like he did with Larkin for what you would expect that to be. I think it's going to be comparable to like the COP and the comp for contracts in that if you're paying your middle forwards this amount of money, you're building a very, very solid foundation where you're going to be able to afford to keep building down it with other contracts. I absolutely love this comparison. It blew my mind when I put all of this together.
I see why you texted me. I see it.
If we have a little Kucherov right now, I am ecstatic.
Yeah, I feel like most people would hear the names and just assume because of where Kucherov is gone and the success of the team. But numbers are numbers. Stats are stats. You could see the performances there, especially if we think, and we do think, Raymond's going to have a big year. Not just a better year, but he should have a big year next year, breakout season. We really might actually have that on this team.
If you are excited about this one, this is when I got excited.
This is good.
The next one blew my mind. This was when I completely lost my mind. And I just want to start by looking at Moritz Seider and his stats so far. This, unless you have like that photographic memory or you really cared about Victor Hedman right now, when you see this stat line, these just kind of look like good numbers, right? 21 years old, almost 100 points, #1 defenseman time. You know, the hits and the blocks are definitely up there together. If we're going to project his year, I think he's going to have his best offensive year. We saw how when you paired him with Wallman versus Sherratt, how much he got better, absolutely passing eye tests. Statistically, everything about Seider got better. He looked happier, looked more excited to be there. He looked more confident. Everything about his game got better. So projecting 55 points, 220 hits, 200 blocks. I don't anticipate him getting too much power play time. That's just my speculation too early in the process here, but I would anticipate more time playing defensively, what this kid absolutely excels at. It doesn't show up on a stat sheet. So let's compare Moritz Seider back to Victor Hedman. This is insane. At 22 years old, he will have been 1 year older than Hedman did when they signed these contracts after their 3 years as rookies. Josh, look at the hits and the block shots. It's actually crazy. And that's just those stats. Those are just like the defensive stats. You can then look at the points. If he has another standard year for himself and performs just a little bit better offensively, he is doubling almost across the board, except for time on ice and games played, doubling what Victor Hedman did at the age of 21. How does this not absolutely ignite your passion, your love, your excitement for this player? All the people across the league, like I see these things go on across Twitter, like, how would you rank these defensemen? Makar, Hughes, like Shabbat, Fox, Seider, and like everyone puts Seider at the bottom. He's 22. He's 21. He's about to be 22. It's going to to take over. We say as Red Wings fans, future Norris contender, bro.
He's right there.
Bro, I don't know how to process my thoughts here, because this absolutely shook me at how good Moritz Seider is. And talking about how good he is, it's going to come with money.
It's going to cost you.
It's going to cost you. You're not getting the 5-year, $5 million contract because he's better than Hedman. Hedman got a 5-year, $4 million. And like across the board so far, we've kind of been saying this player got this, so this one should get like that little bonus. No, Seider is going to get it. Seider is going to get the payday. It all just comes down to whether our perception of wanting to take a shorter deal now and still continue to get better in, let's say, 5 to 6 years, and getting your paycheck now and seeing what that cap ceiling looks like in 5 to 6 years to then, absolutely hit over a $10 million deal. Or he takes the 8-year and Steve Yzerman, similar to Stamkos and Hedman in 2016, get locked up on the 8-year deals at the same time, and we just have a younger, better Hedman in that situation. And I just don't know if he's going to sign someone for more than Larkin. I know that's a really old school mentality. And the only time that he did that, overpay his captain, was when Kucherov went elite. And he signed him at 9.5 to break, I believe, the 8.5 on Stamkos. That's the only time he paid someone more than his number one center captain. It could be Seider. I am leaning that it won't. And I think we're going to be, again, so happy to see the length and value, because whatever you do pay him is absolutely worth it. All right. And last but definitely not least in our hearts is we have to mention Berggren. His contract also ends at that time. It would be doing him a disservice. It would be disrespectful not to talk about him and what can come out of a contract for him. So he only played 1 year in the NHL so far. He only played 67 games of it. He got called up a bit into it. Be very honest, statistically, he does not pass any eye-catching test. But I continue to say, if you watch the kid play, he has it. He has the hockey IQ. And I have him as one of my top breakout player candidates for the Red Wings this year. I think he's going to go and play with a Sprong or a Raymond, someone who can actually score and is not Joe Veleno. And I think you're going to see his assist pop off. I'm anticipating a much more offensively productive one out of him. I think he's still going to get the 65 points. I think he's going to be on par with Raymond in the statistical categories on that, just because it is a little easier to get more assists than goals. And I'm giving Raymond the credit of being a little better, a little more seasoned in the league to be scoring the goals. He's a better goal scorer himself. And I still want to compare Berggren back to Nikita Kucherov. If Berggren has that blow up year, again, if he steps up to the plate and puts those points on the board, he will be 23 years old at the same time. And you can definitely see that with significantly fewer games, a lot less NHL experience, he is a little behind across the board. I don't think he's as strong as Kucherov. I don't think he's as good as possessing the puck as Kucherov would have been at that time. I think he can continue to grow, and I would anticipate a small bridge deal that is going to be very easy for us as Red Wings fans to eat at just 3 years, maybe 3.2 to 4 mil, depending on how much that cap ceiling jumps up. I think that's an incredibly reasonable deal on a young player who could really, really be something big for us. This is obviously the most risk-heavy player in the conversation so far. I feel locked in with Seider. I feel confident in Raymond, and I feel hopeful in Berggren, if I could just apply words to the futures of each of those players.
Yeah, and if it seems like the point jump seems pretty significant from rookie year to second year with Berggren, it's consistent with what we've been saying in terms of what we believe the player can be and what he can be. We have him near the top of our list in our breakout video, and I think this just projects that. I think that is consistent with what we already believe. I don't think this is out of left field, so I'm with you.
The Tampa Bay Lightning of 2016 are scary similar. 2011 to 2016, I would say, are scary similar with core pieces to their team to the Red Wings now. The only thing we're missing, Kos has got to become Vasilevsky. I know that's like the tallest ask maybe of all of them, for the goalie to turn out to be like the Vezina, like pencil in at the start of every year, no matter what, like his name is going to be in the conversation. But they're built similarly. Like everyone joked like, oh, they found their Vasilevsky a couple years ago.
I mean, credit to Yzerman. He's acquired more goalies in the last like 2 seasons than I feel like we did in all of the 2010s. So he's trying.
He's absolutely trying out there. But that is my presentation of the deep dives, some statistical analysis across the players that went off to be the core pieces to the dynasty, the late teens dynasty of the NHL.
Seems like everyone out here is trying to predict exactly what Yzerman's going to do with these contracts. Billy, I think you may have cracked the code. Don't forget to subscribe.